Good evening, everyone, and welcome to CanHammer, your source for 40K from the Great White North. This is Francois, your temporary host for tonight, because your usual host, Darren, had a pipe burst in his house, so he could not join us tonight. Sorry, Darren, I'm sure that's terrible to deal with, but we still have a great show for you today. I am joined, as usual, by my wonderful co-host, Nick. Nick, how's it going tonight?
Good. I just wanted to clarify. Darren wanted everybody to know that it was actually a plumbing problem, just in case there's confusion out there, So all that aside, I'm great. Thanks, man.
Awesome. And we have a very special guest joining us tonight, all the way from New Zealand, the host of one of my favorite podcasts nowadays, the 40K Game Changers, the man with the smoothest voice in all of 40K, Steve Joll is here with us. How's it going, Steve?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Wow, what a setup. I feel my voice is under a lot of pressure now. Thanks for having me, guys. Listen, I really appreciate it. I wanted to do a shout out to Chris as well. I was listening to a CanHammer episode from, I don't know, I was listening to it a few weeks ago, and Chris was on talking about the history of CanHammer, which is such a great podcast.
Storied history.
Yeah. And he made mention of new podcasts coming on, and he said that, when podcasts come on and they come on the scene and they have great production values, they're usually gone within 10 weeks. And I was like, man, I like to think I have good production values in my podcast. Does this mean it's going to be short-lived? But I've made it to 11 or 12 weeks now. So, I feel like I'm doing okay. I've beaten what Chris said I could achieve.
Yep,
so all good.
And I've listened to every single one. They're really fun.
Oh, wow.
Nice little bite-sized listen for my walks with the dog. Really enjoy your conversation with all those game changers. Yeah.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. And I'm glad somebody somewhere is listening.
I'm sure
I'm sure many people are listening, Steve. It's one of the reasons I want to invite you is it's a unique approach to 40K podcasting, because let's be honest, CanHammer included, everybody's just like, hey, tier list. Hey, what's the new army? What's the new hotness? Some of us talk about hobby or whatever else, but I think it's really special to highlight the people that have affected this game that we love and have pushed it to where it is to be, because you make an excellent argument there, and I think you're right that it is a community that has brought 40K to where it is today, and it's just out of control. It's amazing. And I think your podcast is fantastic at highlighting those people. And so I thought we should highlight you, because in my mind, you're this like up and comer that I think it was 40K today. Is that your first kind of exposure? Or?
Yeah. 40K today was my first 40K podcast exposure. I've been in. So my background, if anyone can be bothered, is this of interest at all? But my background is I've been on radio and television in New Zealand for about 30 years because I'm ancient. And so I've done a lot of broadcasting, a lot of other stuff, and a lot of radio projects and various television series and whatnot. But I got into 40K a couple of years ago, and just, like a lot of other people, I fell in love with it, and it's kind of taken over my life and my house and my children's lives and my wife's life and everything else. And so for me, it's a chance to marry up both, the broadcasting and the 40K. And unfortunately, I'm not a very good player, so I'm in no position to do tier lists or expert commentary on how to play the game. And I'm learning to paint and hobby. Probably that's my stronger side, is the hobby side. But I'm a broadcaster who's been interviewing people for a long time, so I thought, well, that kind of makes sense to me. And through 40K today, which, for people who don't know, was it was like a 15-minute daily podcast of just news. It was 40K news every day, and it was fun, but it was so much work. It was a ludicrous amount of work for a 15-minute show every day. But the thing I loved about it was getting to meet people. I got to meet extraordinary people through that show and interviewing every day some great people. And I thought, well, maybe that's where it is for me. Maybe if I can just meet those people, get their stories. And I pitched the idea to Reese from Frontline Gaming, and he said, yep, love it, let's do it. And so here it is. It's I think as we are recording today, or as we're doing this today, I'm about to upload episode 13, which will be the last one in the series of this series. which is going to be Mike Brandt, who works at Games Workshop. And then season 2 will start with Duncan Rhodes, who's, tooth and coats.
Legend, yeah.
So
Oh my
yeah,
God.
he's going to be, he's amazing. And what a super nice guy. We recorded that chat the other day. So that'll be the start of season 2 in a few weeks' time.
Well, I can tell you're definitely a pro because you just handed me the perfect segue into our first topic. Traditionally, we start with the hobby roundup. And so going from Duncan Rhodes to what we've been painting. And since you're our guest tonight, Steve, can you tell us a little bit about what kind of hobbying you've been doing recently?
I've got 2 things on the go at the moment. So, and I know we're going to come to teams tournaments later on, but we've got a teams tournament coming up here. We had one last year in New Zealand. New Zealand is really lucky in the whole COVID space in that we were locked down for, I want to say 6 weeks. And New Zealanders are really compliant people. So when our government said, we're locking down, you've got to stay home. As Kiwis, we all went, okay, that's what we'll do then. So we all just did. We all just stayed home. And with my family, we went for walks every day. And then 6 weeks later, the government said, okay, well, we seem to have it under control now, so we'll tentatively open up again. We're not letting folks in. Really, you can come in, but you've got to stay in quarantine for a while. But in general, we're really lucky here. We get to go out and do stuff, and so we have had tournaments pretty much, for most of the time. So we had a teams tournament here last year in my town in Wellington, and our team won it. And so there's a teams tournament now coming up in Auckland, which is the biggest city in New Zealand, at the end of May 31st-ish. And so we've got to go up and defend our title, right? We can't just let it lie. So I'm getting long. This is a long way of saying I'm getting ready for that. But there was a bit of discussion about what armies to take. I play Space Wolves as my primary army, but I'm also the worst player in the team. So I kind of said, I'm the one that organized it. So I said to the guys, look, if someone else should have dibs on Space Marines if they want them, take White Scars or whatever's super good at the moment. But as it turns out, probably our best player is taking Drukari, new book, very good. And our other guys, there's one who only plays Death Guard, there's one who only plays Custodes, and there's another guy who was tossing up with White Scars but is going to go with Admech. So I get my wolves.
Nice.
So I'm painting the wolves, but I have also been working really hard on a Tyranids Army because I love the models and they're fun, So I came up with a scheme for Tyranids and it seemed to get a really great reaction online when I posted pictures. So I've been working quite hard on that. But I know you guys will know what it's like if you're painting 2 armies at once with a tournament in mind. I'm having to figure out, make the call really soon. Which one am I going to go with, and then just focus on that because. And
if the tournament's coming up real quick, then sometimes you have to cut some corners and maybe not paint as carefully as you would otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And so in the Tyranids Army, I really want it to be, good. When it's done, I want it to be like a display army kind of thing. So particularly those big models, those models like the Flying Hive Tyrant, they're just gorgeous models. So if you can get them looking really, really great. The Space Wolves, I'm doing something, because I do this thing, and I'm sure you guys, like lots of people do it. I do this thing where I'll paint something big, like a Redemptor or an Impulsor, and I'll put a lot of effort in. I found this person based in Denmark, this woman, Emma, who paints like cross-hatching, and it looks like a comic book effect, and she's amazing. And I thought, man, that's cool. I'm going to do that with my new Space Wolves. So I've done all my older stuff, is all just dry brushed and quick painted, but I wanted to do all of my Primaris Wolves in this crosshatch style. So I did a model and I thought, yes, that looks great. I've got it figured out. And then I looked at my pile of shame and went, oh crap, now I've got to do like 30 Space Marines with that same style. And it's like, oh.
And that one guy took me 5 hours or whatever.
Yeah. So the Redemptor looks amazing and that's cool. And then I'll do a few Marines and then I'll reward myself by doing another Redemptor, which is great. And then the Impulsor has turned out well. But then you got to figure out what army you're going to take, and do you paint just to have painted models, or do you paint specifically for the tournament? So, boy, I hope you guys have this. Is this going to be a longer than usual episode? Because I'm answering questions the longest possible way. So I'm working
Oh,
on
please
Tyranids and
keep
Spaceballs.
chatting.
That was
Yeah.
the answer.
Oh, please keep chatting. That's why we wanted to have you on. We wanted to hear about Steve Joll, what he's up to in the hobby and whatever else, like give you a chance to chat a bit, because that's the opportunity
Do you
to give
guys
other
do
people.
that? Do you do that though? Do you start with these grand plans of doing amazing things with the models you're painting, and then look at Tyranids particularly started this amazing thing, like I'm doing these like little dots all over the models, black and yellow dots, which is great if you're doing a hive tyrant, but not good if you've got 30 gaunts to paint.
Well, that's why, on Messenger, people are aware we've been chatting on Messenger, obviously organizing all this. And I was asking you about your Tyranids because I was like, so I've been painting for a long time. So, I'm reasonably skilled at it, but I was looking at how consistent your little dots were. I was like, how the hell is he doing that? Because otherwise he's spending 20 hours per model refining each little circular dot. And anyways, you told me the secret formula. I was like, oh, this guy's brilliant. But yeah, you know what? I think everybody does that. Like I'm painting Death Guard right now. I've had Death Guard and I know new book. So I added a bunch of Death Shroud. And kind of like you, like I really want them to look nice. So I'm wet blending their armor. And so it looks great. And like they're sickly green to like a mahogany color, blah, blah, blah. But it's taken me almost the same amount of time to paint my Death Shroud as my whole Necron's army.
Well, Necron, so
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's a little disheartening. So now I'm like, I got my Poxwalkers. I've got like just 30 or 40 of them on my table right now. I'm like, I can't do it. So I honestly dug through my paints and I brought out the old contrast. I'm like, I'm sorry guys, but you can't get the same level of love the Death Shroud. You're getting contrast.
No, I don't know if this is going to mean people just hate me, but I love, particularly I did an army where I got Magnus. I just wanted Magnus, but then I thought, well, I better start the army. So I started a Chaos army and did a few thousand suns, but I painted up 30 Poxwalkers because I was doing the Jim Vessel list. I couldn't play it like Jim did, but
no one can.
No one can. But I found actually with that, with contrast paints, you can get those Poxwalkers looking amazing. I found a really great method of doing just the green, but also using the Nasdrig yellow, which blends really nicely down into that wildwood brown color. And you can kind of get that on the horns and the swords and things. And then the Nasdrig yellow over the top of the green looks great on the pussy swords. You dab a little bit of red in there. I love contrast. In fact, for the Tyranids, and what I'll do on my Facebook is post, people can see on Facebook and Instagram pictures of the nids, but that yellow is all just contrast Nasdrig yellow. I just do the whole lot of Nasdrig yellow, which gives it a really earthy kind of effect, like almost a natural, you want it to look like bugs, right? So it's kind of got that natural feel rather than a perfect yellow that you want for a Space Marine. So Nasdrig yellow is really good. Sorry.
No, I was going to say I'm a big fan of painting for tabletop because I don't like playing with unpainted models. That's just me. Like I don't judge anyone who paints with gray models. That's perfectly fine. It's just for my own brain. It breaks my engagement if my own army is not painted. What that means though is that I have to very often paint large numbers of models very quickly. Yeah.
Contrast is your friend. I think, and people when they first launched contrast paints, I think people misunderstood the reason of their existence. People were going, oh, but you can get this and that and you can do better and it still doesn't look as good. Yeah, in a lot of cases it doesn't, but that's not the point. The point is to paint 30 plague bearers or 90 gaunts fast and just get them on the table at a tabletop standard, right? This isn't necessarily for the display case. If you want display case, do something else. But
like an army that's dipped in contrast looks better than an army that's not painted. Bottom line. To me, that's the same thing. I had the same reaction. I was like, you know what? This is great. If you're a new player getting in the hobby and it's like, it can be intimidating. Like you go to the store, you look at like, how do I use these paints? It's going to look like trash, right? And you don't want to spend all this money to make your army look like garbage. So if you just say, no, like honestly, contrast, put the blue where you want blue and the green where you want green, and it'll come out looking not half bad. If that gets people in the hobby, all the better. And to be honest, I don't know if you how many hobby channels you watch, but if you go, there's one Hidalgo, and if I've mispronounced his name, I'm sorry. On YouTube, paints almost exclusively contrast. And
Yeah.
like he makes display pieces with contrast. It's amazing. So I
Yeah.
feel like they're just another tool in the chest, right? That you can pop out. Like I've got models that I've used contrast where, you know, if you want to increase the saturation of a color, right? Like you find it's like kind of desaturated, you can filter with contrast. And I mean, it's like any other ink, but yeah, it does a great job of doing that. So I definitely love contrast.
There are some things as well which it's really good at, and again a shout out to Emma Lynn Svensson. Again, I want to make sure I'm not sure if I've said that correctly. I apologize if I haven't. But Emma Lynn has this channel Dyson Demons, and she does tutorials there, and she's the one I was saying does the cross hatching, but she bases everything with contrast and then does the cross hatching over the top. She does these amazing bright colors, and it's good for that, like doing the. Usually you'd say don't paint vehicles with contrast, right? Because you get the kind of different, it's not an even effect. But if you're doing something like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But if you're doing the cross hatching over the top of it, it doesn't matter and it actually adds to it. But the other thing I found contrast is great for is things like power swords. There's a turquoise color and like a real pale blue. And because it's contrast already, wet blending is super easy. You don't need to you just slap it on and kind of muddle it up in the middle, and then you just do a little bit of white edge highlighting over the top. And those power swords look super cool.
Nice.
Great for lights and things as well, you know, lights on vehicles. Yeah
no, it's great to have an extra tool for sure.
Yeah.
How about you, Nick? What are you working on?
Well, I kind of mentioned it already, but yeah, it's a Death Guard. I mean, so in Canada, we weren't as disciplined as you New Zealanders about this whole COVID situation. So we're back in the lockdown, at least in our area, in kind of the greater Ottawa area, if you will, in Canada and Ontario. But I'm still got like my eye on competitive play. So I've just been kind of putting together my my Death Guard, trying to get my list up and ready. I finished a Contemptor, and like I said, I'm getting some Poxwalkers. But I mean, you're a man after my own heart there, Steve. I can't seem to stop buying Warhammer. So, I mean, at one point, Darren wanted to get rid of a couple Space Wolves. We're not talking much, right? It's some Wolfen and Thunderwolves. I was like, he was basically giving it away. So, okay, I'll buy him, Darren. And then so that like quadrupled because I was like, oh, I got to buy this and source parts. I was bugging Francois to 3D print me stuff. So like $1,000 later, now I have a bunch of Space Wolves in my closet that are waiting to get painted. So yeah. It's a real issue. This
it's really Darren's fault. You should send him a bill for all that new stuff.
It is. I'm going to invoice Darren.
Yeah, that's right. That's the thing though it's like with anything. Once you buy, like you start buying a model. When I bought Magnus, you buy Magnus and you're like, well, can't just have Magnus. I've got to have some other stuff to go with Magnus.
Yeah.
But I've only been in the hobby I came in right at the end of 7th, and I've been through so many armies. My wife was like, "Have you started another? I haven't seen those guys before." I'm like, "Sure. They're just different models. They're Black Templars, just like I've always had, but they're wearing blue and fur."
Yeah.
So
that's fun.
My wife has stopped asking.
Yeah.
Because I also bought an army from Darren recently, some Dark Eldar, and I think this is army number 11 or 12 for me on the shelf. And unfortunately, I don't have much of a hobby update. I've assembled some witches to add to the army, but due to COVID, my kids' school has been closed, and it's also end of the semester, so I'm very busy grading and answering student emails. So my hobbying is ground to a halt.
Yeah. It does. That's tough with the school thing. I think not that we want to turn this into something else, but I think that was the big thing for us is homeschooling the kids during the whole lockdown thing. So look, anyone over here we don't really have full comprehension of what you guys are all going through, and it must be just hella tough being in the middle of it all and having to deal with things like that for so long, not being able to see your buddies, not being able to play games, and homeschooling your freaking kids. Man,
it gave me a new respect for grade school teachers. Yeah, I'm an educator myself, I guess, but my students are like 20 to 25.
Right.
So
yeah.
I don't have to do much discipline in the classroom, right?
My wife is a high school teacher, and so she would have the kids in the morning because I still had to work on my radio show. And so she'd have the kids in the morning, and then and she would work them hard. And my kids are 13, and I've got 10-year-old girls, twins. So they were like 12 and 9 back then. she was working them hard, and she'd be like, get this done, get that done. And then I'd come home and I'd be like the substitute teacher, and they'd go crazy. So my wife would go off and do her work, and I'd be like, Daddy's home, let's watch a movie.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, just kick back, crack open a beer.
Well, there's hope. There's hope. I'm hoping that we're going to get back to gaming and to events and all that this summer. So I'm just kind of holding on now.
Yeah, and you've got the perfect army for it, right, Drukari? This is a good time to be into the Dark Eldar if you're building that army.
Yeah, well, I mean, when the Codex came out, I thought seriously about jumping in and buying some Dark Eldar, and then I told myself, no, I have enough armies. Like, I have way too many. I don't need another one. I'll hold off. And then I waited, and then Darren said, "Oh, I'm going to get rid of my Dark Eldar. I don't want to play them. I'm going to sell them." And Darren being Darren, he offered them to me for a very good price. So I kind of felt like I had to, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's this way of serendipitously falling into the meta armies, you know.
I do the exact opposite. It's like whatever army is strong, I buy it. And then, like I did that with Tau. Everything's going great. I bought a Tau army and I asked Richard Siegler to help teach me to use it. I mean, I paid him, so I don't think I was getting any favors. But so he gave me a couple of coaching lessons, and I went to this tournament and I got best Tau. Still only finished like 13th at the tournament, got a best Tau. And then immediately after that, everything fell out the bottom and every other army came up, and then they couldn't fall back and shoot. And so my trip-tired list was just gone. But then I had a similar thing to you guys really recently where I was like, oh, do I want to go Tyranids or do I want to go? I had a couple of options of, armies to look at. I wanted something fast. I love playing aggressive, so I wanted something super fast. And then I was looking around, and on our New Zealand version of eBay, which is called Trade Me, like a local second-hand store posted on our version of eBay and said, Warhammer models, don't know what these are, we'll charge $180 for them. That's, I want to say $180 we're similar to Canadian dollars actually, so it's about the same. And it was this massive Tyranid army for $180. I was like, well, I guess that's what I'm doing. So
now
decision made.
So like mid-interview, you just left and then just went to go get it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it was like, I want to say 30 Gaunts, 20 Gargoyles, Flying Hive Tyrant, Swarm Lord, a couple of other things. And I'm like, well, I guess it's a great deal. And I was tossing up between that and something else. I was tossing up between that and going back to Necrons. And so that was the decision made. Cheap army, go get it, start painting.
Yeah.
Well, Tyranids are so much fun. I have a giant Tyranid army. One of the first ones I ever painted myself, actually. And there's just something about the swarm. I don't know if it's because I played too much StarCraft as a kid, but there's something about the swarm of bugs that I find really fascinating.
Well, I find in most stories, the villains are always the most interesting characters, and they're like kind of the universe's villain, right? I mean, Chaos and the Imperium, these are all kind of internal squabbles and civil wars, basically. But, Tyranids are just that kind of overarching kind of force of nature. Everybody is just waiting for it to happen, right? So it's very interesting, narrative element.
Don't get the debate started on who's the bad guys. Every time someone on Facebook posts, now, are these the good guys or the bad guys in 40K? Like the whole thing just lights up.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Magnus did nothing wrong guy, and the Imperium is the bad guy. I'm just saying it right now.
Well, that's the journey you go on though when you get into 40K, right? So you get into 40K, and I go to my local game store and I fall in love with the Black Templars iconography was the first thing. I think probably being raised Catholic.
Yeah. I
kind of fell in love with that whole thing. And so I get a Black Templars army. But the more reading of the books I do, the more I think, actually, this Emperor guy this is not okay. This is like the Star Wars. This is okay, I see. They're actually the bad guys. So then I go and get some Xenos armies and I read a bit about them and go, no, wait, they're the bad guys, but they're cooler. Like the cooler characters. If you read the books, Betrayer and all of those, Aaron Dembski-Bowden stuff, the characters are so cool. And so I got locked into that for a bit, and Magnus, but the thing is for me, I love the Space Wolves models and the idea, and some people hate them, but the idea of Vikings riding giant wolves to war in space
I mean, there's nothing
Come
more
on.
epic than that.
Sold.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, yeah, it's just, I'm sorry. And people go, well, it's not realistic. It's Warhammer 40,000.
I mean,
None of it is,
this is a universe where to like succeed in interstellar travel, you have to travel through hell. So let's like settle down on what's realistic, right?
yeah.
But
yeah.
the
Astra Militarum is the least realistic 41st millennium based army. They're still dressing like World War something soldiers.
They still have telephones like World War I soldiers.
I can tell you as a former soldier, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense.
The Scions, the shock troopers of the Astra Militarum, their Voxes are literal phones from the 80s.
Yeah, and those guys are wearing like leather helmets with goggles like Biggles, thinking this is going to protect them from what? I don't know. But anyway, so you can't get too tied up. Yes, you want it to have, I like this word, I learned it when I was a kid. You've got to have verisimilitude. You've got to have the ability to buy in and believe what's being sold to you as a storyline. But let's not get too wound up with, with whether or not it's believable stuff. Vikings riding wolves into space is just cool shit. Sorry, can I say? Is that
absolutely.
okay?
Oh yeah, I say the most inappropriate things on this cast.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't swear on my radio show at all. It's a family show, and I don't swear on my podcast just because I don't.
Swear away on this one. That's fine.
We don't have advertisers, so no one too upset.
Yeah, exactly. They can't demonetize us. We don't make any money. So
just a little bit from the Patreons, and that's it.
Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I keep derailing you very, very carefully.
No, it's fine. Actually, I want to jump on to something you just said, because one of the things I did want to ask you was how different is it for you having come into this hobby older? Because from I mean, I don't know, but most of the people I know around here, myself included, I think Nick as well, we came into this hobby as impressionable young teenagers, right?
Like adolescents,
When I got my first box of, it was fantasy actually, I started with fantasy, but whatever. My first box of Warhammer, I was, I think, 12 or 13. Like, I feel like that's the age where your brain is imprinted with that kind of like epic story. And I think as the game is growing, that may be less and less the case. I mean, sure, there's new kids joining the game every year, but I think there's more and more older fans of 40K kind of getting caught up in the same excitement that, for me, a lot of it is nostalgia, but of course I still consume all the content and I read all the books, and I'm really excited about the animation that they're coming out with.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, do you think it gives you a different perspective on the game or the lore to have come to it as an adult?
Yeah, probably. It certainly leaves me at a disadvantage lore-wise in terms of guys that have been into it for a long time just know so many more of the backstories. Funnily enough, I don't know how, sorry, you said you were a kid when you came into it. I was trying to work out, I think I was 40 something. So my son, I took my kid to the movies when he was 8. He's now 13. So that's how long ago. And I took him to the movies, and we were coming out of the movies, and there was a store, the Games Workshops, like our local Games Workshop store was in the same complex as the cinema. And we came out, and my son said, "Can we go and have a look in there?" And I went, "Yeah, okay, we'll have a look." And I walked in, and I was like, "These models are so cool." But and it was just immediately captured by the imagery, the giant space with the cardboard cutout Space Marine that they all have as you walk in. And just everything about it, I loved it. And there's a bit to this actually, because when I got into it, I was a nerd as a kid anyway. So there was, for me, I loved comic books. I collected comic books as a kid, and I was a big Superman fan. I used to, as a kid, daydream that I was adopted and that I would one day find out I had secret superpowers that would only come to the fore later on. So I had that. I always wanted to be a superhero when I grew up. And so I got the nerd brain, right? So I still had nerd stuff going on. Although I kind of got into sports and went around the whole Dungeons and Dragons thing in the 80s. I missed all of that. Other people were doing that. So I think it was always latent in me. And then when I saw the Space Marine stuff, it was amazing. And I just immediately got into it, ostensibly for my son. Like, we took some models home for him, and we were kind of getting him, painting them at the table, and I go, look, I'll show you how to do it here. And I would paint, and he'd go, okay, let me have another go. No, you go do other stuff. I'll finish this off for you,
Yeah.
And then, and it just got to be me painting. I was playing a game. I thought painting would be it. Because I've always been a kind of a creative guy. I did a lot of cartooning. I used to do cartooning for a newspaper and stuff. So I've done drawing and a lot of writing and things. So I thought that would be it. Building and painting and collecting, that would appeal to those parts of me. And then I played my first game, and man, it's like, no, this is it. This is where it's at, playing. And I was playing in my local store against another guy who'd been playing for years, and he was even older than I am. So we were playing in the store, and this guy came in, and he was standing watching me and this guy, Pete, play a game. And he actually said out loud, "You're the two oldest guys I've ever seen playing Warhammer." I was like, yeah, some things should stay in your head, my friend. That's not...
What an odd thing to say.
Yeah,
I know, right? But some people just say things, and that's fine. But yeah, so I'm an older guy playing the game. But if you go to tournaments, actually there are a lot of guys my age or around about my age who are the tournament players in where I'm from. Anyway, you see a lot of the younger guys playing in the store, and a lot of the younger guys talking around the store and painting and learning stuff. But if you go on the tournament scene, it's actually a lot of guys 35, 40 plus in that space. Because I guess they're the ones that have the disposable income. And
well, yeah, to first buy the armies, then buy like the iterations of their armies, and then do the traveling. Yeah, it's going to be people that are kind of established, right, in their careers. Like I was at last at LVO, and to be honest, I felt like I was on like part of the younger element of the crowd, and I'm almost 36, right? So I'm not like super young, right? And it's definitely seems to be a hobby now that appeals to kind of our like my generation older, right? It just it's not exclusive to the super young mind. It's just letting everybody dream and create and whatever else.
I honestly think also in my father's generation, that just wouldn't have been something that someone like him would have done. People were a lot like, they had to take the world seriously. They had stuff to get done. And my dad was he was a military man and a very serious man. But I think in my generation and younger, and I'm, maybe not a great example of a typical 51-year-old, but we have permission to let our childlike self out. With that inner kid that's in us, society has given us permission to be a bit more into that stuff, and it's okay. And also, in the 80s, being a nerd was a bad thing. Kind of, there was a bit of a stigma. Now, there are enough of us where it's okay. It's cool. You can be a nerd.
It's mainstream now.
Yeah.
It's kind of mainstream. And almost, there are people going, "I'm a nerd," and you go, "You're not really."
Yeah, now we're starting to exclude people. Like,
that's
sorry,
right.
You can't be with
No,
this
you're
group.
not.
Yeah.
Do you play sports? Get out.
Yeah, get the hell out of here. Yeah, exactly.
I sold once. I think I posted about this. I had to sell some comics to buy some Warhammer, and I thought, yeah, I'm a nerd. That's a nerdy thing to be doing.
I feel like nerds would do that. Yeah. But so I think that is.
I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, totally. That was great. That was a loaded question because I've heard you talk about this on your own podcast just a little bit, a snippet, a window into how you came to the game. So I thought we'd get the longer story here if we could.
Yeah. I don't know if you're sorry, Nick. Were you going to ask something as well?
No, go ahead. No, go ahead, please. Finish your thought.
One of the things that you guys said we would discuss was positivity in the game. I'm a big and I know that you guys are as well. I'm a big fan of Warhammer, of Games Workshop, and getting into the game is the how I got into and why I got into the game is a big part of that. So I don't know if it's worth starting that conversation now, or if you guys had some other track you wanted to go down first.
I mean, absolutely. And I mean, it's in large part why I was talking to the guys, why I wanted to invite you to the show, because like a little background, right? So no secret, COVID, everybody's been dealing with COVID, and it's like, it's really crappy, right? So I know we don't have to delve too much into that. So, between work stress that people could have, COVID stress, blah, blah, blah. I feel like sometimes the last thing I need is to experience stress through what is supposed to be my outlet. And I mean, it's probably just a sign of the times, but you often end up with a lot of content producers just like expelling sometimes kind of negative reactions to whatever GW is doing or the hobby, blah, blah, blah. And that can be kind of off-putting, and I don't want to say like upsetting, but it's just sometimes like, nah man, this is my outlet. I don't want to be like negative about it. I want to kind of enjoy it. Are GW doing everything perfectly? No, but I mean, nobody expects me to do everything perfectly. I mean, my wife maybe, but other than that, like, so that brings me to you, is like, every time, like from 40K today to up until like Game Changers, it's always been this really positive outlook and discussion around the hobby. And that's, I thought, been like really thrilling to listen to. Why I want to have you on here and like just talk about like pushing positivity in the hobby, because I think that's like something people need right now, right? Just to feel good.
Yeah. I do think, I mean, I think you're 100% right. With COVID around as well, because people have been trapped in their homes and trapped in this situation they don't want to be in, there's also, I think, a lot more folks are quick to anger and quick to, and there's frustration. There's just this frustration inside us that someone posts something on Facebook that you disagree with and you're like, screw you, man, and you just jump on it. You might not have done a year or two ago, but it's just this need to get stuff out. So if you'll indulge me for a second, my backstory, Games Workshop wise, is a long time ago, I want to say 11 years ago, my brother took his own life, my little brother. He was just shy of 40 at the time. And obviously that's awful. And I know a lot of people in the hobby have been through awful stuff like that. So there'll be a lot of people who know what it's like to go through that sort of stuff. And that sent me on a big downward spiral, like a lot of stuff, just awful stuff, and it kind of sent me into some pretty dark places. And then my son took me into a Warhammer store. And it became this focus for me, like this way of focusing on something else. Because, when you're playing or painting or building, trying to scrape mold lines off, you really kind of have to zone in on what you're doing. So you focus on the job at hand, and it gives you, and also you want to think about, well, if I love kit bashing, if I put this there and that there, and so you're doing that. So you really focus on it, and it gave me a something to do and something to focus on. But the other big thing for me was I kind of came into it when the Warhammer community guys were really getting invested on Facebook and responding to people and being funny, and lots of really great stuff was happening in that space. But also the bricks and mortar locally, the guys, when I went in there, the local people, Nathan and Will, who were working at the shop at the time, they're both still there, but they have other guys now as well. And Luke, there's another guy, Luke. Every time I went in there and asked a question, they would just invest so much time with me. They were so generous with their time. And also, if I wanted to play, I could just go in there and get great terrain and a table for nothing. And while I'm playing, rules help and tactical help, and there's just all of this stuff that Games Workshop freely handed out. Yes, I'm spending a lot of money in their store, but not every business does that. So I feel enormous gratitude to Games Workshop internationally for what I think honestly is something that saved my life. I think I was in such a bad spot that the game and how I felt about the game and the people around the game lifted me up, and also the local guys helped me out. And still to this, I just went into the store today, and Will, who works there, was helping me with just putting stinking shoulder, what do we call those? Transfers on the shoulders, right?
Yeah.
So Google how to do it, and there's a million different ways, and I've tried a million different ways, and it kind of works, but I wanted him to help me. And he did. He invested 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I didn't buy anything. He just helped me out. So I have an enormous amount of respect and gratitude just inherently towards Games Workshop for everything that they have given me and done for me. And a couple of years back, I was having a glass of wine on a Friday night. That's what you do when you get old. You have a glass of wine. And I happened to see on Facebook some people ragging on Games Workshop, obviously because their army had just been nerfed, or a model they owned had just been nerfed, or whatever. And I felt the need to let the folks at Games Workshop know that not everybody felt that way. So I sent an email to Warhammer community. I just emailed them and said, hey guys, here's my story. And I told them about my brother and my experiences. And I said, so I just want you to know that when you're getting complaints, or you see people ragging on you on Facebook or giving you a hard time, there are those of us out there who appreciate what you do. and who have a lot of love for the game. And they responded. They replied and said, man, we love this so much. We want to send you an appreciation package. And they sent that email around to all the staff. And then it turns out they sent it around to all the world because our local guys went over to a conference in Sydney and they read my email out at the conference. And just as an example of how people feel about the game. And they sent me some stuff, to play with, some toys and some dice and things. And then the guy said, this is Nick Bainton, who does the painting videos now. He said, if you're ever passing through, come and see me and we'll play a game. And so in 2019, I was passing through. I happened to be in London. And I emailed him and said, well, look, I'm coming. Do you think is that office still open? I mean, no problems if it's not. So he borrowed Simon Grant's Space Wolf Army. He's the guy that wrote the Codex. His Space Wolf Army. And I went into the Games Workshop Grand Hall at Warhammer World and played Nick Bainton's Ultramarines in a game in that environment. And he was the nicest guy in the world. And I'm like, you can say what you like about Games Workshop. Say what you like. But I am indebted to them, and I think that they start from a genuine place. The people that work there anyway start from a genuine place of wanting us all to be into the game. And, so do they do everything perfectly, as you said, Nick? Do they do everything perfectly? No. Have I ever criticized them? Sure.
Yeah.
But inherently, I just have a lot of gratitude and a lot of love for the people that work there, the people that created the game, and the people that continue to, make it what it is. That's a long story.
So I don't want to mention this. So you've mentioned a bit of this story before on like various outlets because I kind of stalk you, right? And no, okay. Being serious. So, before this, I'm going to say, one, I feel like Games Workshop rules writer is probably the toughest job in the world. I just want to put that out there. And yeah, all my love to them to trying to do that and listen to Facebook, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But more importantly, so you had mentioned that story once before. And I not to be, overly kind of dramatic, but I was driving and I remember vividly you were recounting this story about your brother. And honestly, I started to tear in my eyes. It was so touching, and I feel so sad. But I also feel like appreciative of you putting that story out there, because I feel like there's a lot of people that need to hear that what you're doing in a sense is, and it's part of this greater mental health discussion, is like normalizing men talking about, mental health problems. And I think that's, and that goes together with all these discussions that we've been having with people, their frustrations, venting. And I feel like these are all like kind of little symptoms of that. And I just wanted to say, like, I really appreciate like you sharing that story with us, and what you're doing for like normalizing that discussion that guys can have, that you can talk about your feelings, you can talk about what ails you. Because for me as well, like Games Workshop has had a very similar effect. I first got back in the hobby, I don't know, like at the beginning of grad school. And so I had I'm kind of like that obsessive compulsive personality disorder where, like, when I was in grad school, I'd spend 16, 18 hours a day on my work, to a point where it was starting to affect everything around me. So I needed a bit of a distraction, and that, getting back into Warhammer was that distraction to be able to kind of divide my mind's time and help me through that. More recently, actually, my father passed away, and I found that having 40K and the community really helped me work, at least, like you said, kind of ease through that grieving process and dealing with all those emotions, distracting me, right? Whereas, if you start to get overwhelmed with sadness, you start to kit bash or start to paint and let your subconscious run through that. So anyways, I didn't want to bring it up because I don't want to coax people into sharing, their own stories, but that you've shared. I just really want to say that I appreciate that. And I hope that the listeners do too, and know that, that there are people out there that, will listen to them, and it can help them talk about their stories. And hopefully, GW does the same, like Warhammer does the same for them that it has for people like us.
Yeah, there are some people doing, some other guys in the community. And I've said this, and you will have heard, I've said this before on various podcasts that, well, I say various podcasts, my two podcasts that I've been on. there are guys like Stephen Box and Winters and other guys who are high profile in the game, doing much more than I have or could. But I have found the community has been extraordinary when people come out and say stuff. And, you know, every now and then on Facebook, you'll see someone saying, look, I've got this issue, I've got this problem or whatever. And the community which can shit on you on Facebook very quickly, if they need to, will rally and get right behind you as well. And I have also found the like the real people community, like outside of social media, the people that like you guys and the other guys, I've been very lucky to be able to get to know some of the players and people behind the scenes, and the guys in my own local playing groups. People in the community are really, really great and welcoming. My previous hobby was motorcycling, so my wife is very happy that my only way of dying now is on the tabletop. So I actually sold my motorbike to buy Warhammer models. That's how committed I am.
I don't know if that's ever happened before in human history.
All right, well, it did. I sold my Ducati Monster, and with the money, I had to pay off a bill and then buy Warhammer models. Anyway, not the point. The point is, I have found in other hobbies, and you might have heard me say this before, Nick, that other hobbies, if you do like fishing or motorcycling or whatever, people will welcome you in, but in the same way that they welcome a guest into the home, knowing that, you know, you can go again soon. And they'll give you information, but it's always guarded. If you're a fisher person and you go to a new town and you meet people, you say, okay, where do I go fishing? They go, oh, you just go around behind you go into the bay and around over the rocks over there, which is not where they go. That's where they want you to go. And if you're a surfer and you take up surfing, I learned to surf, and you kind of get welcomed in kind of to the community, but you're still a noob, and you can't go with the guys who know what they're doing. You have to go over with the other noobs. This hobby, when I've gone anywhere and asked for help, people are amazing and they welcome you in, and really good players will say, come and play with again, and I'll teach you. And I feel like our community is a bit unique in that we genuinely want more people in it. Like, we want the more people, the better. That means more chances for us to play and more people to play against. Whereas I feel like some other communities are a bit more guarded with their information and with their welcome. I have found a really generous community, and I love it.
And I find the interesting thing is that the best players are the most welcoming. If you talk to Nick Nanavati or Richard Ziegler, I'm just mentioning those two because they're the only ones I've talked to personally. I don't know Stephen Box and all the others, but I'm sure they are the same. They want you to learn and to play and to welcome you, perhaps because they know that they are so good that you're not a threat, quote unquote. But those kinds of guys are just such great ambassadors for the game. Yeah,
I honestly, I've had a little bit to do with Nick over the years, and less to do with Richard, but I think there are people that will think the same way, that, oh, maybe it's because even if they teach us, we're still not really a threat. I'm a garbage player. It doesn't matter how much Nick Nanavati tells me or how much Richard Ziegler teaches me. I will never be, a top table guy. But he has also taught guys who are.
That's true.
Who he's coached guys who then do go on to become a threat. And I don't think that's his motivation. I think genuinely he gets to make a living out of it, which is great.
Yeah.
And again, there's that thing of the more top players there are, the more games for him that are going to be good games.
True.
And, he gets to...
Those guys just genuinely want the game to grow. And I think it shows if you watch them play. I'm a big fan of their Art of War 40K channel. I watch it all the time. And I think if you just watch the way that they explain the game and just show their passion for the game and talk through what they're doing, it really shows that what they want to do is grow the hobby, which is fantastic.
You see Richard Ziegler playing John Lennon. They're two of
very cerebral players.
Yeah, but they're like the best, right? I mean, I don't know if there might be other players who would beat them occasionally, but you're probably not going to get two better players than Richard Ziegler and John Lennon. With full respect to everyone else who's at that level. But they're playing each other, and I saw John Lennon do a thing, and Richard Ziegler actually said to him in the game, did you intend to do that? Because, I've got this relic or whatever it is. And John goes, oh, yeah, you have to. Okay, well, if I can go back and not do that, that'd be great. And Ziegler's like, yeah, of course, man. There's no way you would have done that if you remembered.
And I will say that those guys, they play like that, not just because they're friends. They will play like that against anyone off the street.
Right. And Richard Ziegler will still kick your ass.
Yes.
Well, I feel like that kind of, Yeah, that kind of style is characters a lot of players, because even just recently, TJ Lanigan, another one of the elite players, was playing at a GT. On it was streamed on like Fabricators Forge, and we're talking last game. He's playing Dark Eldar with his Chaos, so it's not an easy match. And like he goes first, so that's not good for him. And it's on the long board edge, or it's like hammer and anvil, whatever style, not good for him. Blah blah blah. And you're talking like the last turn of the game, the Dark Eldar player goes and he's like, oh, I'm going to move this Cabalite off an objective to go do this, blah, blah, blah. And he had mistakenly mistakenly thought that he had enough objectives to, cover the 15 points, whatever else. And TJ's like, hey, man, just letting you know, if you move that Cabalite warrior, whatever it is, off the objective, you lose the game. Because right now you're going to give me the 5 points. And so TJ loses the game because he tells them that. And TJ, it's not because TJ was like surprised. Oh my God, that lost me the game. No, TJ knew full well that he was going to lose the game, but it just, it wouldn't sit well with him knowing that this guy's making a blatantly obvious mistake that, he knows he otherwise wouldn't make, it just.
I see. I talked to Nick about this exact thing in the episode I did with him about, that kind of stuff. And he said, if he wins, when he wins, he wants to know that he beat you. He beat you fair and square. He doesn't want to win because you had crappy dice. He was saying he hates it if people just have rotten luck with the dice. Yeah. Because then you get to say after the game, oh, Nick beat me, but I did roll bad. He wants you to have nothing after the game, which is, it's kind of a roundabout way of not being a great motivation. But he's such a good dude and he's such a good player that after the game, he wants to be able to say, I won fair and square. And TJ must be the same. I've only spoken to TJ via social media and he's always been lovely, but it must be the same, right? Those guys, can you honestly say you would do the same thing if you were in the chance of winning a tournament? Would you do the same thing? I don't know if I would.
Honestly, I don't think I would. I mean, maybe these guys have won so many things that to them, winning another GT or major is not a big deal. But for me, who hasn't won like an RTT in years, I'd be like, you better move that, Cabalite so I win. Like I wouldn't run. I'd move it for him probably.
This is the kind of thing where I'd like to think that I would play that way. But who knows?
I'm not going to kid myself.
There's no way I'm doing it. If some guy's moving off an objective and giving me the win, I'd be like, shut up.
Yeah. I'm gonna go get a glass of water. You're doing great.
That's right. Okay, man, yeah, you did too. Oh, well, I win. Oh, good.
Speaking of competitive play, before we run out of time with Steve, we do want to talk about team tournaments. But before we do, there is one question I really wanted to ask, and so I'm going to ask it really quickly. I did the tiniest bit of research on Steve Joll. By that I mean I typed 40K Steve Joll into Google, and I found a short story that you wrote about Tau, Fire into Water, I think was the title. And I read it, and maybe it was because it was in between grading student papers, but I found it fascinating. It was really kind of a fun buddy cop kind of story. And now what I want to know is what's going to happen to Marley Theon and Oranva next?
Well, I'm not doing anything. That's a standalone story. I've got some other story ideas though. There's a great site, and it's run by a Canadian too. So, called Cold Open Stories, and I don't know if you guys have ever come across it, but
I believe that's where I read the story. Yes.
Yeah, that's where it got published, and they do not only fan fiction kind of stuff, but it's not just any fan fiction. They have editors and they have people, and you have to submit and get approval and whatever, and then they will send edit notes back to you, and so there's a process of getting it edited. They have short stories and then slightly longer stories, and then they also do these great audio dramas. So this is just a little plug for Cold Open Stories. If you want something to listen to, and you've listened to CanHammer, all the episodes and all my episodes, and you've got nothing else, Cold Open Stories do great audio dramas. So it's like audio books, but with sound effects and different people reading different characters and stuff. I really love what they do, and it's to a really high, and I do this for a living, a really high standard of production. So they're great. Shout out to Colin.
Well, I really enjoyed that kind of snippet into Tau society. I'm not a Tau fan usually, but I thought it was fascinating to see kind of the underworld of the Tau and Tau criminals and things like that. It was really, really
cool. I actually had to do a ton of research to make sure that it was not canon necessarily, but that it wasn't going against canon. And there is another book published by Black Library in which there is a Tau investigator. So I got the some of the verbiage and some of the words from that, and then did a whole lot of other research into the whole Tau Society thing. And so I really enjoyed the process. I had a book published a few years ago in New Zealand, and I've been working on other stories and books and things. So it's something I'd love to, man. Being published by Black Library would be the dream.
Yeah, I bet.
They periodically like send out requests and stuff. They're like, you better be submitting your stuff in there, because the second I see a Black Library book by Steve Joll, I'm buying it. Like,
oh, well, I submitted this what I thought was awesome idea, because they wanted a horror story, and I thought I submitted this awesome idea about a I thought it was awesome. Didn't get picked up. They didn't want it, but it was about a wolfen. So it was about actually twins born on Fenris. Twin boys born on Fenris, and one is this amazing physical specimen, and the other one is slightly physically challenged, like he's got a mangled arm and he's kind of walks a bit funny. But the physically impressive kid always sticks up for the other one. And anyway, this is taking too long. But one of them is destined to be a space marine, right? To go away and be a space wolf, and he goes on to become this great space wolf. But when he's getting I can't remember what it's called. You know, the stuff that you, as a space wolf, you have to take the liquid to turn you into to get you ready.
Okay.
As he takes that, he's got such a connection with his twin that it affects the twin as well, and he turns into this kind of monster, like a wolfen. And it becomes the good brother's job to hunt down the bad brother and kind of find him, because he starts going around the place killing kids and things. And in the end, it turns out they're the same person, like Fight Club. Like, there's this whole psychological split that's happened.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of thing.
That kind of thing. Yeah. So, needless to say, they didn't pick that story up. It's
their
this
loss.
is the first and last you will ever hear of.
I know, maybe they're saving it for the next like Horus Heresy style series. You know, you never know.
Yeah, if anyone from Games Workshop is listening, just whisper in the ear of the Black Library editors. That's a gold story that you've missed out on.
Yeah, exactly. They'll come crawling back.
Yeah, they want it. They want it.
Yeah, they won't. Don't worry.
All right. Well, quickly before Steve has to go, we wanted to talk about team tournaments, because I think personally that it's the best Warhammer format, the team format.
Yeah.
Now, Steve, how do you feel about team tournaments?
Well, I've got all the experience of only having played one. So you guys, CanHammer is, you know.
You should come to the CanHammer team tournament next year. There's no place quite like Ottawa in February. It's lovely.
Yeah, ask Nick Manavati, who didn't bring a coat.
Yeah. Well, I've got somewhere to stay. My former boss at the radio station in New Zealand now runs a couple of radio stations in Ottawa.
Oh.
So yeah, he's my friend is there, and I'm still in touch with him. So if I'm ever there, I've got somewhere to stay. No excuses. Sorry, my wife is trying to call me while I'm here, and I'm like, no, this is more important. Now, but team tournaments, look, I only did one, and we've got another one coming up. I love it. I love it for a lot of reasons. The community aspect, the team aspect, you're part of a team, you're doing your individual thing, but you're part of a team. And so you get good players on your team, and you can discuss strategy and how to roll out this thing, before the event. And when we're going away, we're all going to be staying in the same house. So we get to do that, post one day's play, we get to sort of debrief and whatever. So that's going to be cool. But also, as a guy who's maybe not a great player, I get to be part of a great team by surrounding myself with better players and learn from them. And like I say, we won the New Zealand thing recently, and I have no right to win anything. But I had a couple of great players who kind of carried the load, and I learned from them. Just all the way around, it's a cool experience. I really enjoy it. And I'm really looking forward to the next one. Doing your own individual thing is great. And you kind of, if you fail, then you're only letting yourself down, and that's okay. But being part of a team is, it's so cool.
Yeah. Nick, you love team tournaments, right?
Oh, I just commissioned the logo for my team for next 2022's CanHammer team tournament. I've already got my team together. We've already been chatting kind of lists.
Right.
That's how much I focus on.
Well, your team came just above my team last time, so next year I'm gunning for you.
Yeah, we're gonna win it next time. Yeah.
You're not on the same team?
No. We couldn't be on the same team.
I think the big thing is choosing a team name, man. That's the thing I'm struggling with. We've got great players on the team. We had one guy drop out and another one's come in, and that's cool. So we're all ready to go, and we've paid for our tickets and everything, got accommodation sorted. But choosing a team name that's proving to be the tricky bit.
It's actually pretty important because we've been running team names for years, but they're always kind of like spoofs of other team names, and I felt like that doesn't like leave a legacy at all, right? It's just like, oh, you're kind of just
right.
Yeah. But we recently, one of my team members, way smarter than I am, came up with one that I'll say. Hopefully, he doesn't get upset that I've said it on the cast.
Okay.
But it's a 40K pun, the Vengeful Spirits, and our logo is a whiskey bottle. On the label has Horus's ship, the Vengeful Spirit. So it's a pun,
that's cool.
Spirits. Yeah. I thought it was brilliant.
My team name is also a pun. We're the Hammerheads, and we have Hammerhead Sharks on our chest as our logo.
Yeah.
Oh man, could I be the New Zealand branch of the Hammerheads? I really like that too. See, we had a New Zealand-based podcast just for New Zealand, and it was me and a bunch of other guys, and it was just a bunch of guys talking about stuff. And the name of the podcast was Properly Cocked, and so that became our team name the first time we went away to a team thing. But that podcast is not running so much anymore, and I don't know if that's a great name for a team. So we're rethinking it. We'll see how we go.
And for anyone wondering, maybe you are, Steve, the reason Nick and I are not on Team CanHammer for these things is that Team CanHammer is basically the Team Canada WTC team. So it's a much higher caliber than what Nick and I can do.
Yeah.
Okay, right. I was wondering. So, no, that's good.
But another reason why I think team tournaments are so great is that you get a much broader variety of armies. You won't run into 4 Space Marine armies on your way to like a GT tournament. You'll see because every team has to have max 1 Space Marine guy and then 4 other things or 7 other things, depending on which format you're going. You get to see more armies than you would in a singles event, and I really love that.
And more units within it, right? Because you can kind of not tailor it. Well, yeah, I suppose tailor your army. Like for the team tournament that we're going to, the Space Wolves army I'm designing is not. You don't have to face all comers. Like if I run into a gun line, I'm in a lot of trouble. But what I'm doing is I'm tailoring it or making it suit coming up against a White Scars or a NIDS or some sort of fast-moving, combat-focused army, and with a full focus on trying to shut that style down.
Yeah.
So, like, something's gone horribly wrong if I get paired against AdMech, for example. But I do love that you then, because of that, you're going to get units brought to the teams tournament that you wouldn't see in an all-comers army. You'll see them only because you could get to bring them in a tailored list, and it's so cool.
And there's an extra meta game level that I really love. I mean, I'm the team captain, so I get to do the pairings, and it breaks my brain to do the pairings. Because you have to think ahead about, okay, so you match this guy with that guy, then this guy's going to have to match with that guy. And you're trying to get favorable matchups for your team, and it's really not easy. It's like an extra tournament inside the tournament, really.
Yeah, and so I'm not the captain. I'm the team manager. I kind of put the team together and I've organized the travel and stuff. But we've got a guy who's a really good player who's been to a lot more tournaments than me, and he's played at LVO and a bunch of other stuff around the world. So he's our captain. But yeah, the first team tournament you go to, and you will have obviously done this heaps of times, both of you. But the first time you go, and I'm standing there watching the pairing process, going, "No, you guys lost me."
Yeah.
My captain goes, "Do you want to be like a defender or an attacker?" And I'm like, "I just don't know. I don't know. Whichever one means I get to pick the table. Let's just do that. I'll just take whatever, man. You just throw me wherever you want." I ended up being the player that they threw under the bus a couple of times so that everyone else could win. Is what I'm telling people.
But that is an important player. There was a player on my team, Carl, whose job was to lose by the closest margin possible last year, and he was going into it knowing that. We had talked about it. I told him, you're going to get the worst possible matchups. Your job is to get some points. And he was playing a very resilient Death Guard list, so it was the proper kind of list to achieve that. But he was a champ. He won 1 of his 5 games, but he had fun every single game, and he's part of the reason that we finished, I think, you finished 3rd, we finished 4th, something like that, Nick?
On BCP, we finished 2nd.
Okay, and we finished 3rd, and because of the hobby points,
had to get that in. Yeah. Well, you both played him. So we had, in our team's tournament last time, I was that guy. So I got paired up against Harlequins and had no right to. I got hammered in that game. So I think I lost 2 20-0, and I lost 2 really closely, which was important in the end. And then I won one game 20-zip, so that was good.
Yeah, a close loss will sometimes win the round for your team.
I mean, yeah, because
Right.
there are times where, you know, the opposite team has just that one list that none of you are really going to pair well into, but you know the others are going to do well. So
Yeah.
if you can go into that and scrape any points whatsoever, it just helps the team, right? Because also you got to consider the reverse. The other team's expecting to get 20 points out of that matchup. So every point that you claw away from them and add to your pool is worth twice, right? So it's no, it's super. It's actually one of the most important positions. I find sometimes you put your best players, honestly, sometimes one of your best players into that position because they're the ones that are going to get you those points you don't deserve. And then you cars, you know, like anybody can be the goon to bring, you know, whatever the triple repulsor list that was good last year, or, you know, the super, you know, smash your face list. Anybody can play those. It's the ones that have to like play the nuanced game of how do I get 5 points out of this automatic 0. You know, I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, the team tournament thing is just I like single player tournaments, like, you know, whatever, but teams are like, that's my thing. I went to LVO to practice for CanHammer like that. I brought my team list to practice. Like, it doesn't make much sense to spend all that money going to Vegas and do that, but that's what I did. That's how much I love team tournaments, and like just all the administration beforehand, like the meetings that that's what we do, where you have like all in Excel sheets, blah, blah, blah. And you're going through all the matchups. Anyways, no, I really enjoy that element to it.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So not being a great player, the fact that if I was able to scrape a few points for my team, again, that's not something you get to do when you're playing a tournament by yourself over a couple of days. If you lose a game, even if it's a close loss, it's still a loss. But if you have a close loss for your team, those points are super important, and they add up to the team total. So yeah, it's another aspect of it that is that's really cool. And the big thing, a lot of us nerds, I was lucky I was into sports for a little while as a younger man, but a lot of folks might not have had the experience of being part of a sports team and getting to do things like travel. I've got buddies who travel as like in a social soccer team, or social. In New Zealand, rugby's pretty big, and so I know guys who are in a social rugby team and they travel. So being part of a team and traveling and getting to go away for a weekend with the guys and just be part of that is yeah, you know, why wouldn't you?
And sometimes I find that Warhammer players don't necessarily believe you when you tell them that the team format is the superior format, but anyone who's tried it, in my experience, has liked it better than the singles. The only issue is it's a lot more complicated to organize. And really, if you want a team tournament that's got heft, like if you want like a team tournament where there's going to be 20 places, like CanHammer team, you need 100 players in teams of 5. And so you really need a big event. So it's a lot more difficult to just get it together. But I'm hoping that as the game keeps growing and as events become more popular, there'll be more of them around. Because for us, there's really, unless we want to travel to the US, there's really only CanHammer teams in Canada. That's a team event. And I'm hoping that more kind of appear.
Yeah. Likewise over here, we've got this one in Auckland, and I've actually said to the guys running it that I'm really keen to have one back here in our town. So I want to work with them and put on, you know, be part of putting on a teams event back here in Wellington. And look, New Zealand is a tiny country geographically, but also by population. So for us, the teams event we're going to in Auckland has 10 5-man teams. That's probably about where our expectation would be at the moment. 10 teams is not bad. But that's still 50 guys you got to get into a venue.
Yeah, that's like it's still a pretty big GT worth of dudes, you know, all hanging out and sweating in there.
Yeah, and
you need a well ventilated venue.
yeah, exactly.
That's right. Because there are guys, let's not muck around, there are guys that play this game that are not as good with personal hygiene as but then, you know, I mentioned fishing before. That would be worse. 50 fishermen stuck in a small room would be worse.
I won't go into this story too much, but Nick, I don't know if you were there, but we had a tournament a couple of years ago in Ottawa that was in a curling rink. That's the most Canadian location ever for a Warhammer tournament. But the ventilation was off. And there was absolutely no air circulation in the curling rink. And there was about 120 players in there. And let me tell you, walking outside was like being born again. Like all of a sudden you could breathe.
Yeah, we had something similar in New Zealand. I want to say a couple of summers ago. Like, it was the height of summer in Wellington. we don't get tropical temperatures, but we get like, I want to say it was 25, 28 degrees Celsius, something like that. So it was a pretty sunny, pretty warm day. And we were in a venue, and it wasn't just 40K, it was 40K, AOS, and then the, you know, the guys that do the reenactment type.
Flames of War, or the historical
Flames of War,
yeah.
Bold Action. There were a whole lot of different. So there would have been similar, about 120 guys in a hall, no aircon, small doors open at either end of the building, and just no wind. And it was just like, oh, man,
just that lovely bouquet, you know, just aroma hitting your nose. Yeah.
And the good news is you're only in there for what, 8-9 hours, something like that. It's more, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's for sure.
Having said that, if you're listening, don't let that discourage you from joining a team tournament. We're all, the three of us are very big fans of team tournaments, and if you haven't tried one yet, you should find the team. It's actually not that hard, because there's always teams looking for players, and you can post on the event page and say, hey, I'd like to come, but I don't have a team. Does anyone need a player? And you will find a team.
Yeah, often events will have a roster of stragglers that they need in case, like, because there's always things that can happen when organizing teams of guys. You'll end up like a week before the event, some guy can't play, and then the team is stuck, so they need those rosters to fill in, you know. Definitely. Yeah,
we had, and even almost every town, we have our own, like locally in our town, we have a Warhammer 40K Wellington group. And then there are others around the country set up by different people. And so we did have a player who couldn't make it. And it was really legitimately just a matter of dropping a line on the local Warhammer hobby group and saying, hey, we're doing a tournament. One of our guys can't come. Anybody keen? Within about 10 minutes, we had a guy say, yeah, love to. So, you know, there's always going to be, yes, there will be challenges, and there are some more logistics to figure out, but it's totally worth it. I couldn't agree more with you guys. The teams thing is, I love individual tournaments, but the teams thing adds a whole nother level to the enjoyment of it.
Totally. All right. Well, I think that's mostly the time we have with Steve. His wife is still trying to call, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I think she's banging at the window now in the studio.
Thanks. Thank you very much for joining us for this lovely chat. That was great.
Before you go, Steve,
really enjoyed it.
We just want to make sure you plug everything that you want to plug to the 14 or 17 listeners we have. You want to get them on board.
Well, listen, I think you gave me ample opportunity at the top to plug. The main thing for me at the moment is 40K Game Changers. As I mentioned, Duncan Rhodes will be guest number 1. We've got guys coming on like Brandon Grant, and just a whole bunch of guests already lining up for season 2 of 40K Game Changers, which I'm really excited about. But between now and when that season starts, I've got to finish off painting my space walls and get to an RTT on May the 1st, and then get to this team tournament at the end of May, and then we're into it.
I can't tell you how jealous I am that you get to play real Warhammer.
Yeah, you know what? I probably shouldn't have. I shouldn't be. We're conscious also over here that we don't want to be posting photographs at events and rubbing anything in anyone's faces, because
stream the event. I need to
honestly,
vicariously through you.
Put photos, stream it. Yeah, exactly. I want to watch. I don't care. You guys did it right. You should enjoy the benefits. Last thing before you go, I know we just want to keep you here forever. Any plans to go like LVO 2022? I don't know what year we are anymore.
Yeah. If I can, if that wasn't a swear word, if I can, but it came out sounding differently with my New Zealand accent. I hope people can understand me. Look, that's the life goal. My dream previously was to get to Warhammer World. Can I just, one more quick story before I go? It was
Absolutely.
The greatest day
talk all night.
The greatest day of my life. And that includes birth of children, which was a good day, but also,
let's be honest, it's gross.
7 out of 10. Yeah.
It was a good day, but it's led to years and years and years of being in debt. So, as has Warhammer. Anyway, so I had this, my wife is French. So we go to France every couple years, COVID notwithstanding, we haven't been for a while. We go to France every couple of years to see the folks, and I wangled it so that we were able to go via London, and I could go to do the train trip to Nottingham. But before I left, I emailed Lawrence from Tabletop Tactics and said, look, this is a long shot, but I'm going to be in London where you guys are. And I'm a broadcaster and I love your setup. Is there any chance I can come and visit? Well, he was just in the middle of a move and getting married and a whole lot going on. And he said, look, I don't know, we might be halfway to Bath by the time you get here, which is a town outside of London, but I'd love to have a beer and catch up. So I go on a one day, my kids go off and do like the Harry Potter thing in London or whatever, do something, go shopping, whatever, with my wife. And I go by myself on the train to Warhammer World, meet Nick Baton, play with Simon Grant Space Wolves, have a beer at the bar at Warhammer World, buy some stuff at Forge World, get back on the train, come back to London, meet Lawrence Baker from Tabletop Tactics, go for a beer at a restaurant, go for dinner and beers, and buy some dice off him. And he buys the meal, like he paid for it all at the end, and just have the greatest day of my life. So do I want to go to LVO? Yes. I want to have another day like that. But New Zealand is a very long way away.
Yeah.
So for me to get to LVO is like 30 hours on a plane and probably $5,000 worth of flights. So
wow, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, our big thing actually, I'm part of, or was part of, the New Zealand team that was supposed to go to Austria 2019. And I'm part of the setup that is arranging, the part of the larger, the wider training group that is hoping to go in 2022. So that'll probably be the next big trip. Again, that's very expensive. It's a very long way away.
Yeah.
But man, for a guy my age also and in my job, it's possibly a once in a lifetime chance to go and play Warhammer against some of the best players in the world.
Absolutely.
In Austria, in Europe, it's going to be amazing. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. So the long, again, I do this long answer to a short question. Yeah, I'd love to come to LVO. It's another life goal to get to LVO, to get to play in Canada. I've met so many guys like you, so many cool people that I just would love to roll dice with. That I feel like renting a car in LA and doing a big North America trip with my army and just going everywhere I can. We should film that and make it a documentary.
Yes, you should.
You 100% should. I mean, it'd probably be very successful.
Yeah, get a tax break on all the expenses.
Yeah.
What a genius idea. The Warhammer trip across the States, meeting famous Warhammer people and rolling some dice and playing some games.
And you can make Ottawa your endpoint. It's kind of logical.
Yeah, exactly. If you come in our neck of the woods, let us know. You can come stay. Oh, you already got the
I got somewhere to stay, but
yeah.
I don't got somewhere to play. I got somewhere to stay, but not somewhere to play. So
we'll organize that for you.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, it's so good to chat with you guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
That was great. Thank you for coming.
Thanks a lot, Steve. This was awesome.
All right, CanHammer fans, this is all for us. We'll catch you at the next one.